Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Code and Regulation Committee for, Monday, February 10th, 2025. Before we start our committee, we will go through some formalities. We'll begin with pledge, prayer, and we have public speakers. We also have a proclamation from the mayor. So if everyone could please stand for prayer, please. Who's our chaplain? Oh, our chaplain tonight is Pastor Eric Levenholm. Nice to see you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we will begin with our public speakers. Tonight we have 3 public speakers. A reminder to our public speakers that the microphones are located on both sides in the back of the room, and everyone does have 3 minutes. And when your 3 minutes is up, I will ask you to stop. Give me 1 second to get my timer here. Our first public speaker is Prophet Yusuf.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In the book of Psalms, the 121st chapter, the first to the second verse, it says, I look to the hills which comes my help. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. What I want to speak about tonight, they say that they didn't have African-American training instructors in the military. That's a lie. I'm going to name some tonight. My oldest brother who died was a Tuskegee training instructor in Alabama, Kentucky, and England. He was a Tuskegee fighter pilot. My other brother, who is 95 years old, was a Montford Point Marine who did 11 years in the Marine, was a senior drill instructor at Paris Island, South Carolina. He also did 9 years in the Army with Secretary of State Jesse White. My other brother, who is 91, did 10 years in the Marine Corps. He was a senior drill instructor in San Diego, California. I did 19 years, 11 months, 29 days, 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 15 seconds in the Navy. I was a weapons training instructor at Coronado, California, Little Creek, Virginia, and Recruit Training Center, Great Lakes, Illinois. My oldest nephew, who was 74 years old, did 24 years in the Army and retired, was a drill sergeant at Fort Benning, Georgia. My other nephew, who is 63, did 30 years in the Marine Corps and retired, was a senior drill instructor in San Diego, California. My other nephew, who is 57, did 20 years in the Navy, was a Master Chief and training instructor in San Diego Recruit Training Center and retired. My other nephew, who did 20 years in the Air Force and retired, was a military training instructor at Lackland Air Force Base. He's 54 years old. So African Americans, don't believe the lies they say about our people. Our people have fought and died for the United States of America. I'm glad you're here, Alderman Huffman, and I wish Alderman Durkee was here too. I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time, and I'm going to get it off my chest tonight. I don't like you, I love you, and you can't do nothing about it. And happy birthday, my good friends, and I wish you many more. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, my good friend, happy birthday to you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Okay. All right, our next public speaker is John Tag Brantley.
Good evening, Mayor McNamara, all the persons and our citizens of Rockford, Illinois, and mostly those that's watching TV. I am just tickled pink watching Donald Trump become our next dictator here in the United States. Not only have he fired government officials, now he's going after the judges that's blocking his every program that he want to cut is affecting the have-nots. But little do he know, everyone in the program like LIHEAP, oh man, got brain freeze. The program for Head Start, and I can go on down the line, is federally funded. So how do we respond to what Donald Trump planned on doing by taking the federal dollars? There's one easy solution, and I'm bringing it not only to y'all, but I'm bringing it to every board member. Every board that I go to, also going to bring it to Springfield. The same dollars, the federal dollars that we sent to D.C., Washington, D.C., each state should hold them federal dollars and fund the program that them federal dollars would have been paying for LIHEAP, Head Start, and Rockford Housing Authority, and I can go on down the line. 99% of Rockford Housing Authority budget comes from the federal government. I'm also, blown away that this DVD, I got the best secretary in the world, and I got the best mentor in the world. My mentor is the library. I watched this video, the Grab. Do you know that more than 65% of our farmland, cattle, and pigs are owned by by China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia? They are shipping our products out the country to their country because we have the resources. That's why our prices is going up. That's why I'm disappointed at the president, why he didn't stop that. Now, all of a sudden, the Saudi Arabia have gave $9 million to Donald Trump, whatever he want to do with them funding. What are we doing about stopping China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia from shipping our products out of this country, and our prices is steady going up? Check out this here video, The Grab, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And this Monday, we are going to Freeport to the Underground Railroad, and I'm blown away how many people don't even know what the Underground Railroad is. Well, I was at a church and listened to a pastor talk about our history. She talked about more about the museum than she talked about the Underground Railroad. No offense against Caucasians, but Caucasians cannot talk about our history the way we can talk about our own history. Thank you for allowing me to speak. All power to the people.
Thank you, Mr. Brantley. Our next public speaker is Kimberly Corley.
Thank you for having me. $57.8 million people suffer from mental illness, representing 1 in 5 adults in mental illness now. 23.08% experience a form of mental illness and 60 million Americans. 20% of adolescents may experience a mental health problem in any given year. 50% of the problem established by age 14 and 75% by age 24. What has changed since 2023 regarding Rockford's mental health crisis and adversary group? Mental health awareness should not be recognized monthly but daily. Good Mental health helps us cope with and deal with life and its uncertainties. If we Americans don't recognize or understand the complexities of life and how we may happen to fall into certain fears of the unknown, then how can you really help me or us? If you're watching me be attacked, humiliated, and stripped of resources, how are you helping me? If you watch me suffer and be traumatized yet turn the other cheek, not helping provide a way, how are you helping me? See, I realize people of authority only want to use us and for us to tell our stories in order to capitalize off our trauma, pain, hurt, and put us in danger. Then say, oh, we will provide these resources, mental facilities, administer poisonous medicine, chain us up, lock us up in prison. But recidivism is real. Borderline personality disorder is the hardest mental illness to deal with. Why? Because it is a disorder that deals with trying to cope with the volatile and overwhelming emotions that we have to face every day. People battle with PTSD because we have people in the world who are sadists. They love to see people traumatized. Then when you see a person show disruptive behaviors, you call them crazy, weird, and disconnect his or her social connections and wonder why people spaz out. It's not giving a person a choice, but giving a person a chance. All that matters. So that's why people are discriminated against and their civil rights and human rights are violated. Why? Because in your mind, you have given me a choice versus giving me a chance. 1 in 5 suffer. 6 in 10 get no treatment. 2024, 57.8 million had mental illnesses. And I want to just say this right here. But mental illness costs the country $190 billion in lost earnings every year. Why? Depression is real. Murderers. People are getting murdered for mental illness. People are getting murdered for mental breakdowns. Call 988 Life Live. Rockford is currently declining at a rate of 0.58% annually. Population decreased by 2.9%. Most recent. Rest in peace, Phyllis Hyman. Rest in peace, Stephen Twitch. Rest in peace, Kate Spade. Rest in peace, Anthony Bourdain. Rest in peace, Robin Williams.
All right, that concludes our public speakers. And next we'll bring up Mayor Tom McNamara for proclamation.
Thank you, Alderwoman Tarina. We are fortunate that we have Assistant Deputy Chief Paul Gallagher as well as Sergeant Carl Bergstrom with us. We have Chief Fred and we have Michelle Markham with us as well. Michelle, if you wanted to take a photo in the center, we're not going to stop you. Okay, we are here today to proclaim School Resource Officer Day. Whereas the Rockford Police Department school resource officers serve as dedicated guardians of safety, ensuring a secure learning environment for students, staff, and families. And whereas the officers' commitment to fostering trust, mentorship, and positive relationships with the youth of our community strengthens the bond between law enforcement and the citizens they serve. And whereas their daily efforts to protect, guide, and educate contribute significantly to the well-being and success of Rockford schools. Now, therefore, I, Thomas P. McNamara, as Mayor of the City of Rockford, do hereby proclaim February 15th, 2025 to be School Resource Day. Would you like to share a few words?
Sure. I can talk loud. So. Yeah, people at home want to hear me. Okay, perfect. So again, Assistant Deputy Chief Paul Gallagher, Rockford Police Department. This is just one of the units I run, school resource units that I oversee. And we have 10 officers that go to about approximately 40 schools, just under 30,000 students, and this is it's a great impact they make. They make good connections with the principals, good connections with the students, and I just wanted to make sure that we recognize them this year and recognize everybody that works in that unit.
All right. You did a great job, Michelle. By the way, today is 5 years that Michelle has worked for the police department, so congratulations.
All right, thank you, Mayor. All right, so we'll begin the Code and Regulation Committee. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Tarina.
Aye.
Wilkins. Barrios.
Oh,
Daly.
sorry.
Bonnie.
Said the wrong thing.
4 present.
All right. So committee reports. Item number 1 is Spring Creek Road and Brookview Road. The Traffic Commission recommends approval to establish a 20-mile-per-hour school zone speed limit restriction on Spring Creek Road from Brookview Road, east intersection to Mulford Road. May I have a motion to approve this item? Is there any further discussion on this item? Alderman Thunberg.
Thank you, Chairwoman, for allowing me to speak on your committee. One of the things that I also...
Pull your mic down, please.
I'm sorry?
Thank you. Microphone.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. You know, this isn't in the Third Ward. Third Ward does run along Spring Creek on the south side up until Eisenhower. And one of the things that I foresee happening in this is individuals taking Highcrest as an alternative to avoid this area at 20 miles an hour. I realize that, and just so other people do as well, there currently is a 20-mile-per-hour school zone right around Spring Creek School. Of course, this would then extend all the way to Mulford. I foresee individuals that are going east on Spring Creek in an attempt to get ultimately to Mulford, Perryville, Bell School Road, that they will begin taking Highcrest to Alpine, to Guilford, and then on out to Mulford and Perryville and Bell School. So for individuals that live along Highcrest and then ultimately Guilford Road between Alpine and Mulford and on along to Bell School, be prepared, because I foresee that this happening. I'd love it if I was wrong, if this does pass, but just a forewarning to those residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Durkee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alderman Thunberg brought up what I was going to say, and that is there is already a 20-mile-per-hour school zone in front of Spring Creek School.
Thank you. Alderman Bonnie.
Thank you. So, again, I'm still a little perplexed by why we would be doing this in front of Guilford High School when we're not doing it in front of any of our other high schools, which are also on busy thoroughfares. When we have a push-button activated crosswalk there, and we are talking about high school students who can, it's different than the elementary school down the street. And if the traffic is going to stop for the push-button activated crosswalk, but whether it's, I'm not sure I agree with the Third Ward Alderman that people are going to look for a way around this school speed zone. I think people are just going to drive like it's not there, and which potentially could increase safety risk for the one that is there. It begs the question again: are we going to do? What about Eisenhower on the other side of Alpine on the same street? If we have one, if we're going to have a speed zone for the high school and the elementary school, why not? Why would we not have one for the middle school? If we, East High School again, there's East High School Charles Street is almost probably equally busy, and in addition to that, it has a drop-off lane right on the street, and there's no speed zone there, I believe. So I guess I just feel like this is, I don't want to say no to this because it is, student safety, but at the same time, I don't feel like we've been given a lot of great rationale for why we should have it, including we should know, how many school speed zones do we have, if any, on our major arterials besides Spring Creek Elementary. We should, I spoke with Director Hinkins earlier today. This is a citizen request, not that citizens shouldn't even be encouraged to make requests, but there's no indication that the Rockford School District is worried about this. The Rockford School District has a representative on the Traffic Commission who is being replaced or has left the district, so was not present, I believe, either time when this has been before the Traffic Commission, and we have no indication that the school district thinks there's an issue here. So I would, rather than vote no, I would move we lay this over again and ask for some better justification for why we should do this.
I'm going to hold your motion. I'm just going to see what Alderman Hoffman has.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I have one question. Is there any walk light for the students to get from one side to the other, or are they running across the 4 lanes?
Director Hinkins.
Yeah, there's an existing pedestrian signal, walk, don't walk.
Alderman Toomberg.
Thank you. Just, I would like to add to something that I had mentioned before, or I'd follow up, that, again, what I would foresee, again, not definitive, but if you slow traffic, I mean, again, as Alderman Bonnie said, or the 14th Ward Alderman said that that there already is a school zone, a speed zone in front of Spring Creek. You take that all the way to Mulford, and my concern is as well, to Highcrest being a cut through as well as Guilford Road, is that you're getting the possibilities of drivers making up time, i.e. when they get out of that lengthy school speed zone, that come the time they hit Spring Creek Road past Mulford going east, they're going to increase speed to make up for that time and increase it in other areas to make up time that they feel they lost by a 20-mile-an-hour speed zone that went all the way from Mulford to past Spring Creek School. So that could be a possibility, again, not definitive, but I also know that it doesn't look like many kids walk along Spring Creek Road from Spring Creek School to Guilford High School, and I do know that Alderman Frost is vehemently against this as well. I can't, he hasn't paid me to be his spokesman tonight yet, but he should. So, but I wanted to add that as well. Thank you. And it's not, I'm not against school speed zones by any means, but when you look at Johnson School, Brookview School, schools that are in those neighborhoods, absolutely school speed zones are necessary in those. On Spring Creek, it's just a whole different dynamic. Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, Alderman Bonnie.
Thank you. I want to compete for the work as Alderman Frost spokesperson. So he brought up the issue, and I don't know that it was really at a previous meeting. I don't know that it was really addressed. How are we going to enforce this? And we also still haven't been told exactly. I mean, this is the majority of. I mean, we should be told like how long is what is the distance between Alpine and Mulford? It's about a mile. This is right. And this has got to take up about 3/4 of that mile when you put the two speed zones together, or school safety zones. I mean, again, all of that should be before us. How's it going to get enforced? And what are we going to do when somebody decides East High School needs one, or Flynn Middle School needs one, or Auburn High School needs one? I think, you know, the elementaries are an exception, and most of them are in residential neighborhoods. Alderman Thunberg mentioned one that's really not, that's on rural, Maud Johnson, but even that is just a 2-lane road. It's a major thoroughfare, but it's just a 2-lane road. I would, again, move that we lay this over for further information one more time.
Okay, is there a second to lay this over?
Second.
Okay, so we have to take a vote on the layover. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Tarina.
No.
Wilkins. Barrios.
Aye.
Bonnie.
Aye.
2 ayes, 2 noes.
So we're tied, so that means it fails, right? Okay, so the item is not laid over. Is there any more discussion? Because if not, we'll take a vote. We'll take another vote. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Tarina.
No.
Wilkins.
No.
Barrios.
Aye.
Bonnie.
No.
1 aye, 3 noes.
All right, so that item does not pass. Number 2, Spring Creek Road and Mulford Road, Brynwood Drive. Traffic Commission recommends approval to establish a 20-mile-per-hour school zone speed limit restriction on Mulford Road from Spring Creek Road to 40 feet north of Brynwood Drive. May I have a motion to approve this item?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this item? Alderman Durkee.
Madam Chair, just to reiterate, this is split between the 1st and 4th Ward. On that corner is Christian Life School. That's a drop-off school. Nobody really walks to school. There is a activated light that services that from the neighborhood. Like I said, which maybe a couple students over the years I've seen walk there. So I have no idea what the purpose of this is for. I will be, if it passes, I'll oppose it on the council floor, but this is a school zone looking for a purpose, in my opinion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Tarina.
No.
Wilkins.
No.
Barrios.
No.
Bonnie.
No.
It's 4 noes.
That item fails. Thank you, Mr. Hinkins. Resolutions. Number 1, the Memorial Day Parade. This event is scheduled for May 26th from 8 a.m. to noon. The parade step-off time will be at 9 a.m. The parade will follow the traditional route, which will begin at 7th Street and 5th Avenue, ending at Memorial Hall on Wyman Street. May I have a motion to approve this item? Any questions on this item? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The item passes. Number 2, 2025 Rockford Area Pride Parade. This event is scheduled for June 7th from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. The parade step-off time will be at noon. The parade will follow the traditional route, which will begin at 7th Street and 5th Avenue, north on 7th Street to State Street, west on State Street to Wyman Street. May I have a motion to approve this item? Second. Any questions for staff? No questions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The item passes. Number 3, Lifescape 4th of July Run. This event is scheduled for July 4th from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. The run will begin at 7 a.m. The run and walk will begin and end on North Water Street in front of the Riverview Ice House. The route will also include Madison Street to the Rec Path to Illinois Street and back. May I have a motion to approve this item?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? No questions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The item passes. Thank you, Mr. Bloom. May I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the Planning and Development Committee meeting for Monday, February 10th, 2025. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Here.
Here. Thank you. We do have an information item here tonight. It's an update from the Mayor's Office of Domestic and Community Violence Prevention by Ms. Jennifer Capchapalia.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone for taking the time to be here tonight. Usually Jason Holcomb presents with me, but if you recall, at the last time I was here, we did a pretty extensive update on our data. At this point, R1 is evaluating 2024's data. We received the NIBRS data late in the year last year, so that analysis is not complete. He will be back with me this summer, but for tonight, it's just me. I plan on doing a high-level overview that I think will be a little bit quicker than the past. I'm just going to be going over some updates on our lethality prevention division, our juvenile enhanced response team, and then finally the Family Peace Center. So let's jump in and start with our lethality prevention efforts. For some context, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I'm afraid I'm going to cough a little bit through this. For some reminder context, you all remember that strangulation is one of the most lethal indicators and a solid preventer of future homicides. In fact, if someone is being strangled, they are 750 times more likely to die at the hands of their perpetrator than not. And it was because of that, when this office opened, we knew that data, that we worked so quickly with leadership at Rockford Fire, went really quickly to our dispatchers and to our EMTs to help them understand what we were dealing with specifically when we talked about a strangulation survivor. As a result of their leadership, an automatic ambulance response was dispatched to all strangulation scenes. And because of that, we saw a 20% increase in survivors going to hospital. That's really where our work around data and strangulation started. It evolved into the application of the danger assessment at the Rockford Family Peace Center. And just to remind everybody, the danger assessment is a validated tool developed by Dr. Jackie Campbell on the East Coast. And what she did was study over decades homicides in domestic violence situations and identify the factors that were present in most, if not all of those. Domestic violence is preventable. It's predictable and it's preventable. And she really, through her work in the danger assessment, gave us a tool that can evaluate risk. At the Rockford Family Peace Center, in February 2023, you'll recall, we started implementing a sample of that danger assessment. It's over 24 questions. We're not going to ask a survivor when she or they walk in the door 24 questions, but we do give them an opportunity to answer what's called a danger assessment 5. And those are 5 of the questions that are the most lethal. And one of them is strangulation and whether or not someone has been strangled. And so tonight we start with our updated data. Consistently, since February of 2023, survivors walking into the Family Peace Center indicate that over half of them have been strangled, and 74% of them are scoring at high risk of death. That data now is included through December of 2024. So we know in a sustained way the people that are coming into the Family Peace Center are at high risk of death and in fact have been strangled. And it is because of that consistent data point that you will remember that we formed a strangulation response team, a task force, if you will. And that multidisciplinary team is represented by that membership there up in the box. And in 2024, we really turned heavily to our helpers and our healers in the medical profession. We knew that getting survivors into an ambulance into the hospital was the first step. We needed to make sure that our response to them in medical settings was also improving. And because of that, we developed a partnership with UIC College of Medicine. And for the first time in Rockford, Illinois in 2024, 70 medical students received domestic violence training that was built with Mary McNamara, Doctor of Nursing from Loyola University, a Voices survivor from the Rockford Family Peace Center, somebody who had experienced strangulation and had in fact survived that, and then our team. And so in September of 2024, we delivered that colloquia to UIC College of Medicine, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our next steps. We also, with the help of Jay Hanley at the Winnebago County State's Attorney's Office, developed, implemented, and I want to say explicitly, this was Jay's leadership. He took this upon himself. There is something out there that we are considering called a duty to warn. In some states, first responders must read a script to survivors who've been strangled. That's how serious it is, to make sure they understand that what they have experienced could in fact kill them in the next 24 to 72 hours if they don't get medical treatment. And so there's a duty to warn script that Illinois does not require, but we're talking about what we can do to get that information to survivors on scene. And while we were talking about that, the state's attorney's office actually incorporated that duty to warn. So now when a survivor who has been strangled, when that police report comes across the Winnebago County State's Attorney's Office, their victim advocates are taking another opportunity to help that survivor understand that they have experienced something that is very high risk of death and encourage them to get connected to resources. We also are working on finalizing in 2024 our strangulation protocol. We have a phenomenal team that sits across our table. Some of us are going to retire someday. And we want to ensure that the best practices that we are developing right now are becoming this community's final and permanent protocol in our response to strangulation. So all of those agencies right there, right now, are working on helping us memorialize that. We plan to have that done this summer. And then finally, we are working with our law enforcement to add a QR code to our Illinois Domestic Violence Act form. When a survivor has experienced and called for help domestic violence, they receive a form when officers leave that show them their rights and provide them next steps. We're adding a QR code to that, which will lead survivors to our landing page that we've created. That will have a significant amount of resources for strangulation and additional supports for them and their children that they just don't have to remember that night. They'll have it right there with them. And so that's what we really started in 2024. We'll continue to build on those, but in 2025 we are relaunching our multidisciplinary team with our dispatchers. Members of the Winnebago County State's Attorney's Office are going to become a more robust part of that training to help our dispatchers really understand how impactful those 911 calls are. We know, in fact, that our state's attorney's office review those 911 calls, and how those survivors engage in what they say on the phones really set the tone for the philosophy of the prosecution going forward. And so our state's attorney's office is going to be coming in to talk more about that with our dispatchers. And we are also embedding another layer of strangulation. We know that if an adult survivor is being strangled in the house, that our kids are probably being strangled too. And so often we're missing them in the home. And so we're going to be working more with our dispatchers to help them understand the results and the impacts of pediatric strangulation and help them ask some questions and screen for things to figure out if our babies are in the house as well, so we can get them connected to services. We are also, as you all remember, we have a pilot that we have launched or are launching at UW Health System. We are going to be putting 2 strangulation advocates in the emergency room there. The project manager position is that is open. Tell all your friends, please. We're ready to launch that as soon as we can find somebody. But in preparation for that, we are building a 5-part multidisciplinary training for emergency room doctors and the entire emergency room staff at UW. After that 5-part training, we will, based on the evaluations of that training, continue to work. But we are going to allow and receive and ask for the medical professionals to tell us what they would like additional training on. But that's actually launching, I believe, next month. And then finally, as a result of the medical student colloquia that we did in September, the evaluations, again, were phenomenal, and our students asked very specifically for hands-on standardized patient encounters. And so we are working again with Dr. Mary McNamara. We will be working with the Voices Survivor member and our case managers, and in March of this year, we will launch those practicums with our students at UIC College of Medicine. We're very excited about that. I wanted to show you on these next two slides the outcomes of the work with the State's Attorney's Office. You'll remember in August of 2023, our law enforcement under Chief Red's leadership implemented the strangulation supplement that we had been working with. It's simply a one-page form for our officers to go through and ask the questions that they need to ask on scene. The intention is to streamline the questions for our officers and also get better evidence in the hands of our State's Attorney's Office so they can make charging decisions right away. And we see from the work of that strangulation supplement that when the strangulation supplement is used, our convictions for strangulation have increased. That is remarkable. We have never seen that before in Winnebago County. And because of the work of that supplement and the State's Attorney's Office, we're seeing an increase in convictions. We are also seeing fewer cases reduced. We so often see people charged, and then because of a multitude of factors, those charges get either reduced or dismissed. And with the strangulation supplement, we are just seeing that happen less frequently. The other wing of our lethality prevention division I wanted to give you a brief update on is our Domestic Violence Fatality Review Team, or DVFRT. And you all will remember that we worked very hard to get unanimous bipartisan support creating legislation that allowed local teams to review domestic violence homicides. The entire point is to figure out what systems gaps need to be changed so that we can prevent future homicides. That is the entire point of this effort. These recommendations will become statewide best practice prevention recommendations that we will all then work to implement from these initial reviews. Rockford is one of the first pioneer communities that agreed to take this on. We, in fact, conducted our first case review. We finished it last week. We will be doing that again this summer. We'll be doing our second case review. Those partners in that box have been remarkable. We have spent hours, over 12 hours, actually closer to 16, doing a case review of one case. And our partners on these teams showed up every time and gave everything that they could to this. And this is no small feat. This work is incredibly difficult. Someone has died in these situations. And what this has really launched is conversations with our coroner, where we are going to be looking at focusing more on staged crime scenes. We know perpetrators will kill their victims and often stage it to make it look like a suicide. And we are going to be working with her to provide some more training and to help her team get better at spotting that and really working with all of our first responders in our community. But ultimately, our recommendations will be submitted this year to the state for prevention efforts on a statewide level. Next, turning to our Juvenile Enhanced Response Team, I'd like to provide you an update starting with our Community Healing Center and then our Trafficking Task Force and some evaluations from our Educator Summit last year. So you'll remember our Community Healing Center is modeled after the Family Peace Center. It is where a youth that has ever been exposed to any violence can come and get that wraparound navigation of services. We don't have another Family Peace Center, and so this model is really intended for our workers to go into the community. What's happened? I don't know what's going on. Starting with our Community Healing Center, I'll go down to that slide. And so our footprint really is at the Irving Avenue Stronghouse with Chief Red's team. That is a house that youth can come into during the day, during regular hours, and we are on a regular basis working with 24 youth there. Their ages range from 3 to 15. The hours are after school and during the summer, during the day, and the services that are provided are mentorship, huge is mentorship, education support, and navigation of services for anything that youth or their extended family may need that they identify and work with us through the house to get. Because of the work in the Irving Avenue Stronghouse, we have also been called out into the community to provide some additional work. Very specifically, we started to work with McIntosh Elementary and were able to identify with their staff 17 of our kids who've been exposed to violence. And we know in Rockford, Illinois, that our kids exposed to violence, the unmitigated trauma, often will wind them up in the criminal justice system. So it is imperative to our prevention efforts to get in front of our kids as soon as possible. And so the work, I want to say Principal Erin Salzberg and her entire team at McIntosh have been so very focused on this and really phenomenal partners with us. But we have launched at Washington Park on January 27th a 10-week series where we will go into that school with our navigators and focus very specifically on these 17 young people and their families. We also have been called out to Washington Park Community Center. Our navigators have all been trained on restorative circles, and the entire goal is to mitigate conflict. Our kids are going to get upset. We all get upset. And so we're working to try to get our kids the tools to choose non-physical confrontation as a way to navigate the issues that they're facing every day. And what we know from our work at Washington Park Community Center is that after our kids have gone through those restorative justice circles and those healing conversations, is that we see a 66% increase in that youth self-identified hope, which is essential. Because if our kids don't have hope, they stop, much like every other adult would do. And so it's very important to us to focus on our youth and lifting them up. And so our Community Healing Center, that's where we've expanded into 2024. In 2025, we'll continue to build on this. We stand ready to potentially take on a youth from another elementary school, but right now this is where we are. And I want to, again, I can't overstate the importance of the collaboration in that Irving Avenue house with Chief Red's team. The community services officers there have been phenomenal to work with. Our Human Trafficking Task Force, again, these are our partners on our multidisciplinary team. Since I was here with you last, the two new partners are officers from the Illinois Gaming Board. They actually reached out to us and asked to join our team. And then also the U.S. Marshal Service. I did not know until a few months ago that the U.S. Marshal Service has one person who is assigned to runaways, which is essential. Because we know that if a child runs away 3 or more times, they are in fact at risk to be trafficked or to be exploited. Our kids cannot survive on the street alone, and traffickers know that. And so having somebody in charge of looking for our runaways and getting them back is just critical. But this is, as we sit here today, our entire Human Trafficking Task Force. And what we did in 2024, I don't usually report out on trainings and awareness, but in this case, we are so far behind the 8 ball as a country in understanding what this does and does not look like. It's imperative to our work that we are out everywhere we can possibly go, talking about what human trafficking looks like and what it doesn't look like. We also developed a case staffing process with technical assistance from the Office of Victims of Crime. We, in fact, are staffing 10 cases right now. All of those are females. They all were born and raised in Rockford, and they are all between the ages of 12 and 17. And I want to say that 6 of them disclosed after going through the training of Not a Number put on by Rockford Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation. 6 of these young girls said, hang on a second, that's happening to me, or it has happened to me. And so our prevention and education awareness efforts is paying off very, very well. We also increased collaboration and developed an enforcement subcommittee. There are conversations that have to take place about these cases that I cannot be a part of, that Andrea Carlson cannot be a part of, and that our social service providers cannot be a part of, that it has to be law enforcement and law enforcement only. So Jay Hanley's office leads the enforcement team, and they have private conversations when they're working a case about what to do next. And then generally we get reported out. You will note that there was a human trafficking sting that took place last month. As I'm saying that out loud, I regret I don't have their names and pictures to put up in front of you, but maybe I'll bring that next time. But there were men in this community that were arrested for attempting to purchase our kids for their use and abuse. And so it's those sort of enforcement details that will come out of this work. Because of one of the training and awareness events that we held, that we were a part of in October, a group of college students from UIC College of Medicine approached us and would like to work a data project for us now. And so we've actually started to meet with them. They're working, I think, going to start with the ISP, with the Illinois State Police portion of our enforcement wing, because they are leading so much of the enforcement efforts right now. But we may be starting with a profile of who the purchaser of human beings is in Winnebago County, or who comes to our community to do that, because we know men from other community actually come here to do that too. And so we might develop a profile of that. And then finally, we deployed the prevention curriculum of Not a Number within the Juvenile Detention Center and in other spaces. And we will continue to quadruple down on those efforts because, again, that's when our kids are starting to say, hang on a second, this has happened to me or it's happened to somebody that I know. And so that's our work on our Human Trafficking Task Force. Turning now to our Educator Summit, you all remember when we did our GAP document, the community said to us, get to our kids just as fast as you can. Every survivor I spoke to said, why weren't people talking to me about this when I was in school? I interviewed about a dozen perpetrators of domestic violence for that GAP document, and they said the same thing. Why didn't somebody tell me when I was young I should not be doing this? And that is why we went so quickly to our teachers. So we held our 7th annual Educator Summit this past August, and it was record-breaking attendance. We had 300 people there. That's the highest we've had since our first year. And we do a pre- and post-test evaluation, and these next slides show that we are doing better at helping our educators spot it, but most importantly, know what to do with it, because that's just the beginning, is knowing how to spot it, right? And so we can see before and after the test, we saw an increase in teachers' awareness of the effects of strangulation. Our young people are being strangled too. Adults don't just start strangling at 18. Our young kids who are in school are being strangled by their boyfriends and girlfriends who are under the age of 18, right? And so we have to have a better understanding in general about the effects of strangulation, and our Educator Summit shows that we're accomplishing that. We also saw an increase in the ability to identify signs and symptoms of strangulation. So often, again, we have a survivor who's been strangled, and they do not understand what's happening inside of their body. And so it's important for us to be able to understand that, to help notice it and encourage them to get medical treatment should they need it. We also saw an increase in the ability to recognize a child who's been groomed, right? And that is the first step in trafficking. We're not talking about kids that are being cracked over the head and thrown in a trunk or being snatched up while they're trying to shop at Rue 21. We're talking about relationship building. And so it is so essential for our teachers and people who are around our kids to understand what that looks like when a perpetrator starts to groom one of our kids to try to lure them into this situation. We also saw an increase in those attendees' ability to identify youth that's been exposed to domestic violence. Again, that's the first step in getting them connected to services. And then finally, most importantly, we saw an increase in teachers' awareness on what to do. What are the resources for our kids? So we're getting there. We are seeing more and more of our educators understand it and know what to do about it, and that's the goal. Turning then specifically to RPS, I can't overstate how happy I am to sit here before you all tonight and tell you, for the first time in this community's history, Rockford Public Schools has a teen dating violence policy that meets the standards that the state intended. I want to say very explicitly that our Deputy Director, Andrea Carlson, authored that teen dating violence toolkit. She spent months developing best practices from across this country, put that together, submitted that to RPS, and it was 22 pages. They adopted 19. So we are very happy. But I also want to say that now the work starts. And let me be clear. Showing videos to teachers, doing one-offs on school improvement days will not meet our expectations. It will not meet the expectations of this office or this administration. That's nonsense. There has got to be a robust effort to provide training and ongoing support and resources to the good people in our buildings that are trying to help our kids. And there are enough talented people in this community where that will be no problem. RPS just needs to step in and let us help, and I believe that that will help. And I also want to say that I believe that because of the leadership and tenacity of Nicole Bennett in refusing to put this down, I think between her advocacy and the ongoing sustained relentless advocacy of our office, we were able to finally get this over the finish line. So I just want to name that. Also, my other piece of the update on Rockford Public Schools is that in 2024, there were 3,043 handle with care notices about our kids. As we sit here tonight, there is no system-wide, district-wide response to those kids still. It appears to be on a school-by-school basis. It's our understanding that this year the internal multi-tiered system of support teams inside of each building are in charge of this, but we really don't know. And so we're hoping, again, this year, that there will be an improved response, that there will be something systemized to help our children receive services and be navigated through what they need to be navigated through, but we're still waiting for that as we sit here tonight. And then finally, the Family Peace Center. So I just want to go over some data showing who's still coming into the center. But before we start, I am so happy to be able to officially say publicly for the first time that one of the partners that will be moving into the new Family Peace Center is the Carrie Lynn Children's Center. They are moving their entire operations into the new building. They will take up about half of the second floor. We have a couple other youth-facing agencies that we're working to get in right now, but Carrie Lynn is the only one that I can announce. And so they have been a part of our discussions with the architects, ensuring that their space needs are met, that the privacy needs are met, that the forensic interview space for our officers to interview our kids are up to speed. And so we're really excited about that. Our next phase with the architects will be a cost analysis now that we've got the drawings final, but that will be our next step. And so just closing then tonight with some data, nothing new here. The primary person walking into our center remains somebody who identifies their perpetrator as a former dating partner or a current spouse. That's primarily who we've been serving since we opened. We also know that our two primary victimizations are domestic violence and then our kids who've been exposed to violence. We've served over 2,100 survivors, and over 560 of those are children. And so we know that, again, getting to our kids as soon as possible is critical, and so we're very happy about those numbers, and I wouldn't be disappointed if I saw those increase. Again, I mentioned this at our last time together. Between 30 and 40 is when the person is first entering our building, and the concern for us there is that we know from our police reports that the person who's calling police is between 20 and 30. So our survivors are calling for help, but then they're not, at least not getting to us for another decade. And so we are in ongoing conversations about how to increase advocacy and awareness around that. And I am hopeful that if we can continue to increase education in our high schools and in our middle schools, that we might see that number change a bit. Again, our primary person that comes into our center is a woman, by far. And the primary race that the person identifies is white, followed by black, African American. And these are all self-identified, I should say. And then finally, our exit surveys. We remain near 4 out of 4. And so I also want to mention here, Alderman Torina, you had kind of encouraged us to see if we could get some additional surveys, get more of an increase of those being completed. And as a result of that, we created QR codes. They're up all over the center now, and actually there's an actual link to it in all of our signature lines. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a significant increase in people taking them, but we will continue to double down on those efforts to try to get more. I think it's just a matter of when they're there, the crisis is done, and they're ready to go on to the next thing, but it's something that we're mindful of. Again, just a reminder that Jason's not here tonight, but will be back with me this summer to do an analysis of the NIBRS data. In the meantime, that will link you to our data. That gives you an entire storyboard about so much of our work, but in particular, the data showing our work compared to 16 peer communities. And then finally, just thank you. Thank you so much to all of our collaborators. Thank you to all of you for your ongoing support of this work, and to my fellow department heads. We would not be successful without each and every one of you. So thank you guys so much. And then, of course, our entire coordinated community response. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Alderwoman Torina.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak on your committee. Wow. Some major wins. Congratulations to you and the team. Congratulations on your recent award as well. I just had a question just regarding sort of the state of the country right now. We're seeing a lot of funding being cut at the federal level. Do you foresee, or is there any federal funding that has been cut or we think will be cut that will negatively impact the Family Peace Center? If so, can you please speak about that, please?
Yes, mercifully, we are primarily reliant on state and Winnebago County Mental Health Board grants for FPC operations. Having said that, every one of our partners is reliant on federal grants. So while I am not concerned about our ability to staff, what I am concerned about is, will there be a shelter to send a survivor to? Will there be services to send survivors to? And so our partners at Rockford Sexual Assault Counseling, Children's Safe Harbor, and Remedies Renewing Lives are my primary concerns. I do not know what's going to happen to their funding. With our office, very specifically, our Children Exposed to Violence grant is 100% federal funded. I am exceptionally concerned about that. The work we are doing with our kids and the interruption of that trauma, it is working, and we need to stay the course. And so I am hopeful that after a review of the current administration that they will see that this is a valuable tool, that we are boots on the ground working with our kids to reduce violent crime. But that is the one that I'm watching very closely and that I have the greatest concerns about for our team. Yep.
Alderwoman Punty.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a lot, and thank you for the work that you're doing. And I could have missed it, but I just wanted to see if you could, I know that we had been at the Boys and Girls Club, and I don't think I heard you mention that.
Yeah. Ultimately, we were at the Boys and Girls Club, and they ultimately had an influx of some funding to do their own programming. And so we had some meetings and kind of decided that we would go to a different primary location for now and still hold hours at the Boys and Girls Club. And so we do, in fact, still hold some space at the Boys and Girls Club, but it is not our primary location. And that happened pretty quickly.
And so now the primary location is?
The Irving Avenue Stronghouse, which is in the same footprint, but it's not the Boys and Girls Club.
So do you see, number-wise, are you seeing any difference between the two locations?
We have a more sustained population at Irving Avenue. 24 regular kids.
I have another.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Thank you. And then, and I know we've kind of talked about this before, but appreciate the work that you do for the Educator Summit. It's always insightful, and but I just always am concerned. I know you, and I know that your numbers are up, and I guess I would ask, like, your number of people attending the Educator Summit is one thing, but I'm just wondering, do you have the data on how many educators those are you're serving, and meaning classroom educators, because everybody there is an educator, but classroom educators, because I think that, you know, we have more contact with the children.
Mm-hmm.
And then it seemed like, at least last year, like your scope had expanded a little bit, where you had some other communities participating. So I guess when I hear that number 300, I'm wondering what's the impact Rockford, and then where we're also, what other communities are being served as well.
I don't have the number of Rockford versus other communities. I know that it's primarily Rockford. I can look to see about getting you those numbers, though. The other communities that I do know were there last year were Belvedere. That felt like there was a heavier presence from Belvedere last year. And I believe it was Durand or Dixon. It was one of the D communities. But those were the two that were there last year. But I'm happy to look at numbers for how many RPS employees are there. They're definitely our target. That's who, again, all are welcome, but this is our community, and we're really trying to get to our kids. And so because of that, We really have advocated with RPS to help us advertise. We've advocated to get them to pay people to attend. We've not accomplished that yet. But we will be pushing for that again this year, in particular for the teen dating violence policy. I've already let Morgan Gallagher know. We will give them time to train on this if they would like to at the conference this year. It's early enough for us to schedule that, but so we will be stepping up those advocacy efforts for RPS attendance as well. But at the end of the day, what we really need is for Rockford Public Schools to pay their teachers to attend. And they can. We need them to do it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Alderman Thunberg?
Chairwoman, how many people on staff now at the Family Peace Center and everyone that's dealing with these issues?
11.
Okay. Are most of those grant funded?
Over half are grant funded.
All right. Are the rest incurred by the city of Rockford?
Yes.
With all the work you're doing with RPS, which is noble, have we ever considered, or is it a possibility of conversations maybe going forward if we are going to now seem to expose the various programs to at the RPS level, and more time is going to be spent going forward with RPS, which is justified? Have we ever considered the possibility of RPS stepping up and contributing, and not just the city of Rockford doing that? Again, not sure if there's agreements already in place or what have you, but just want to see what your thoughts are on that.
I think that would be a logical distribution of their funds. I can tell you that our effort around that was in the call to action. We submitted a proposal to them that would have provided staffing, just a couple of our navigators, but then also the good people at Comprehensive Community Solutions, YSN. There are amazing people in this community. Pay somebody to be in your buildings to mitigate with this with the kids. That proposal was rejected by a small group of cabinet members who reviewed it. It did not make it to the board. And so that was our effort. That was in 2021, I believe. But I have not been part of any other conversations with them around funding. I will just state that I think that's a logical leap for their funding. So I would support those and be happy to be a part of those.
I think maybe we could look at maybe having those conversations going forth, hopefully with administration as well. I think would encourage that. And, so thank you. Another thing is, I know that in the past couple years there has been news of much human trafficking coming into our country and are causing human trafficking and kids that unfortunately are it's happening to as well, and kids that are unaccounted for. Are we seeing any of that or any increase in our community? I know that other communities that the answer would be yes, but in Rockford ourselves, are we seeing any of that?
More kids, Alderman, just so I understand your question, specifically coming in from outside of the country?
Yeah, I guess so.
No.
Or women?
No.
Okay, good.
No. All of our cases are born and raised here, groomed, sold, and purchased by people born and raised in this area.
All right. Well, anytime anyone inside or outside, what have you, is extremely unfortunate, and I think I've made myself very clear that anybody that's either involved in that or a male that lays a hand on a female should be more than severely dealt with. And there's some bad cats in our community, and that not only live here but come from elsewhere. We just had a rape on the bike path recently that's just outside of the 3rd Ward by a couple hundred feet, and between individuals that live here, individuals that come here that have bad intentions, I would say all are welcome at your organization that need to be serviced because of that. But again, I've made it clear here on council floor that the sign at East State and the tollway where it says all are welcome, I would vehemently disagree with that, as well as victims of assault, violence, trafficking, and such. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification about who our victims and perpetrators are, and that they tend to be homegrown from around here. What I would like to hear more about, and I think you said you would mention it the next time, and that is a profile of the purchasers. And I know that none of these are perfect; they're just general, but for the most part, right? And that whatever picture you may paint for me, there will be someone who does not fit that profile, but still does that act. But do you also have a profile of some of the perpetrators that, especially you talked about some of your victims who come into the center, but like give us an idea of who's doing this? You know, do you have that as well? Who's doing this to them?
Trafficking survivors in particular, or violence against women in general?
Violence against women in general. I know you talked about that there was someone that they knew, but I think we kind of I'm looking for more like, is this, I think you have this image in your mind of some, you know,
scary person behind a garbage can? Yeah.
But,
no. What I can tell you in general is that they are the men that we live with, that we work with, that we love, that bag our groceries, that make legal decisions for us, that represent us in court, that take care of our health. They are brokers, grocery store clerks. They are all walks of life. And the best study we have on that is a study from 2008. And I know it's an old study, but I'm going to cite it as long as it's there because it is good. But in 2008, the the Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation commissioned a study. And they put an ad in the Chicago Tribune and said, if you have ever purchased a human being for sex, we'd like to talk to you anonymously. We will give you a gift card. We just want to talk to you. And 113 men showed up and said, I've purchased a human being for my use and abuse. What do you want to know, and where's my gift card? And they were exactly who I said. Over 65% of them had a college degree. Most of them purchased sex as a rite of passage with another man in their family when they were 18. Most of them had wives or significant others. And most of them thought this was their right to do. That if they purchased a human being, that person had no right to say no to anything that person had decided to do that night. And so it is a chilling study in that what is clear is that they are the men who walk among us. I'm going to say this now. All men don't do this. There are good men in this community. There are good men around this horseshoe and in this room. I work for feminists, as a matter of fact. So I don't want anybody out there listening to be like, well, they hate men. No. It is because we work with and have been around such good men that we know, in fact, that this does not have to go on. But we also know, in fact, that we need men to come get your friends. Because the sanctioning of it, the looking away from it, is hurting people. It is hurting people. And we need the people who are driving the demand, which is the purchasers, the men, to knock it off and to hold each other accountable. And until they do, we will never get in front of this. So that's what I would say about that, Alderman.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move into the item 1 is an approval of the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Rockford and Go Rockford for the continued management of the Forest City Beautiful program, as well as the citywide banner program. Do I have a motion to approve? Any comments or discussion? Alderman Durkee?
Yeah, it's a good program. On the budget, or on the budget request, there is a request for a 3% automatic cost of, I guess, increase for potential cost increases. I'd actually make a motion to remove that and just have an annual review of the contract. I think not a lot of our citizens are guaranteed a 3% increase every year. Just like to see the Go Rockford make their case for their budget on an annual basis, rather than give them an automatic increase. So I make that motion to revise the contract detail. I forgot the number.
We have a motion and second on the floor. Is there any discussion or questions? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Aye.
Aye. And now we'll need a motion for this first item still. Correct, right?
We're good.
Okay. So do I have a motion on item 1 to approve? I'll second. Any questions or discussion? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Madam Chair, just a clarification. We're on number 1, and this is the revised.
Correct.
Okay. Aye.
Aye. That item passes. Item 2 is an approval of the proposed EV parking agreement with Zipcar for utilization of city parking space with EV charger in Lot 45 at South Main and Cedar Street. The initial term of this agreement is a period of 1 year with an automatic renew for successive 1-year periods. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The item passes. Item 3 is an approval of the preliminary conditional set-aside letter, which would lead to a home rental development agreement with the owner of Creekside Apartments. The funding source is the Home Investment Partnerships Program. Do I have a motion to approve? I'll second. Is there any questions or comments? Alderman Durkee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually opposed to this development agreement, or the home funding part of this. I think I'm pretty well, people pretty much understand my opinion regarding this. I think there's quite a bit of subsidized housing and different housing units across Rockford. The home rental, the home funds have the ability to be used to bring up other properties to a level of livability. And we now are getting into a situation, I believe, where we're using some resources to build new properties when we still have a plethora of properties that are in need of assistance to bring them up to standards. And we are digging a hole, and we get into a point where precious resources are distributed over a bigger and bigger pool. And we are becoming more and more ineffective with some of the programs that we have in Rockford. This one in particular. The other is I'm not really excited about the developer, the agent, as they were also involved in the fairgrounds project that seemed to blow up. So I'm also disinclined really to prove much investment with this developer. So I would be opposing this.
Any other questions or comments? Alderwoman Serena.
I have a question for, was the allocation of these home funds like sort of included like in the original capital stack for this development at South Main in Harrison?
So we're on, right now, we're on Creekside, which is on Avon.
I'm on the wrong one.
That's okay.
Okay.
But so what the stage is, both of these developments, 3 and 4, what the stage that they're in is they are trying to submit their application for funding to IDA, so they're working on their capital stack. So they're estimating, according to the point system that IDA has, like how much they think they'll get from the LIHTC, from IDA's set-asides and that. And this particular developer thinks that their gap will be $500,000, and that's what they're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Alderman Beach.
I think you answered the question. They're asking for the full 500,000. Is that correct?
So we worded the conditional commitment up to 500,000 because after they submit their application to IDA and we see what they're funded, we're only funding the gap, right? So if it's less, we wouldn't want to be in that position, right? So we're saying up to 500,000 at this point. When it is approved by IDA and when that capital stack is finalized, if that situation came, we would come back to you with the funding agreement and have the full sources and uses named because they'd be finalized at that point. So you would be able to see what money is going into this project.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
No.
Aye.
No.
That item does not pass. Item 4 is an approval of the preliminary conditional set-aside letter, which would lead to a rental development agreement with the owner of Riverwoods Apartments. The funding source is the Home Investment Partnerships Program and the Community Development Block Grant. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Alderman Durkee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These Riverwood Apartments, the applicant for this is Liberty Development.
Correct.
This is not the other project. Is it the same one that's on Harrison and South Main that we just?
It is the same project.
It's the same project.
It's the one that just came through zoning. So now this is they want to do the same thing, apply for funding, so they need our conditional approval.
Now, one more comment, not to sound schizophrenic more than usual to my colleagues, this particular development also primarily a significant number of these units are for seniors and disabled. Which I actually do think we need some help in the city of Rockford for senior citizens and disabled folks. So I actually am in favor of this program.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't even know how to address you. The mayor?
Thank you, Alderwoman Wilkins. Maybe I should have spoke up previously on the item just before this. We've had a lot of discussions around housing. Recently, we've done our own housing study that shows that we need 3,000 to 9,000 new residential units, and that is from every form of housing, from affordable housing to luxury housing. We're making good progress. I would say there were also comments about how we could use our tools to, I'll say, rehabilitate homes, and that maybe we weren't doing it that effectively. I would say actually there was just a report that came out last week that stated that we were not just doing it effectively, we are actually a best practice in the nation in what we're doing. If you recall all the work and the effort that this council has done to invest in the Community Development Financial Institution, where we now have more than 200 homes in our community just in the last 2 years that were vacant and or distressed, and now are totally rehabilitated and fully occupied, with more than 90% of them being single-family owner-occupied residents today. So they weren't being productive properties. Now they are productive and providing people with that opportunity of the American dream to own a home. For those homes that are in disrepair and people are living in them, this council for the last several years has done a great partnership with Habitat for Humanity to do our critical home repair program, where dozens and dozens of properties are being invested in to ensure that people have the dignity of staying in their home. We, back in late 2017 or early 2018, partnered with the National
Resource
Network. I just have NRN down. Thank you. National Resource Network, the NRN, they just came out with a new study that actually shows how our neighborhoods, with these tools and many others, and great community partners, don't want to say it's just city, have actually dramatically changed the landscape of our neighborhoods, moving many of the emerging neighborhoods, which in there, if you recall, were kind of distressed neighborhoods, to high-performing and healthy neighborhoods. Would urge everyone to take a look at that, and also take a look at the maps that they provided that I know we emailed out last week that really can show you neighborhood by neighborhood the improvements that have been made and the tools. I would just urge, we need all forms of housing, and we need as much of it as we can get right now. Again, 3,000 to 9,000 units to keep up with the economic development that's taking place in our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Durkee?
I would just add one caveat to what the mayor has said, and that is, in fact, when one of the groups came here who advocated the numbers, when we asked a lot of detailed questions about where it came from, a lot of it was guesswork. So while I agree housing is needed, I'm not so sure, I can't quite get a handle on the validity of the studies. But as it relates to this number 3, I think the mayor and I would agree on one thing, and that there is a lot of substandard housing that needs to be developed. And by taking the home resource dollars and spreading it too thin, I think we lose some inertia on developing the properties that are already distressed, and then taking that resource and building new property. It's almost like sprawl. We're skipping over the distressed properties. I think that's the priority, because that's how we're going to reclaim. We reclaim neighborhoods not by sprawl and building more stuff. We reclaim neighborhoods by addressing the poor housing, the poor buildings that bring a neighborhood down and basically is blight. I think we probably agree more than disagree. It's just a matter of procedure. So that's why I was opposed to 3.
Alderwoman Torino?
Ms. Lies or the mayor, can you speak to that statement that was just made about guesswork on the housing study?
So the housing study looked at, population growth, economic factor, like talked to major employers, the chamber, all those sorts of things, and then looked at our population statistics. And, where I'll say what was a little confusing to try and understand is our population has decreased recently, right? We've seen that in our last census, but our employment number has increased, and our number of employers looking to expand in the area and looking at the area has increased. So typically an area, you're seeing that stuff at the same time. You see population growth and economic growth at the same time. We were turning the wheel, is what I would say, right? Like, so to keep population, you've got to be actively engaged in your economic circles, thinking about the employers that are here, how are you going to retain them, how are we going to help them expand, and you have to be attracting new ones to come. There were large efforts being put in place to rescue the jobs at Stellantis, to reinvent that employment center, right? So that happened, but there was loss of population before that happened, right? We're now starting to see that ramp back up. So that study does talk, and we tried to be very open, about these are the numbers. It is a very confusing story to try and do a projection on. So we gave a larger range than maybe you normally would in a housing needs analysis. We said 3,200 to 9,100 units. Normally you'd be either low or high, right? But it's trying to tell you that looking at the moment they were looking at, Stellantis was not ramped back up yet, right? PCI was building. There's some things there. And at that same time, our population was less than it had been 5 or 10 years ago. But there was every reason to believe, based on a lot of other factors, that Rockford was trending towards going back to where we were increasing population, not just employment, but increasing population. And we had a moment, too, where we could really think about attracting. There are employers that are moving in, like we mentioned Stellantis, but there's other ones going into the Belvedere area, into our full MSA, and Rockford could take advantage of that and attract more residents here to our housing if we started to think purposefully about making sure we had the types of housing that would attract those people to live here, right? So if an employer moves into McChesney Park, people don't have to live in McChesney Park, right? They can live in Rockford. So why don't we think about that from a positive and aim for that too? So the study tries to acknowledge some reality, but also give that, like, hey, this is a chance. There's every reason to believe that you have an ability to be in a better position as a city. So we're recommending that you go on that upper end. And then one other thing I'd like to, just from a market standpoint, whenever community economic development is looking at how it's investing in a community, you're really looking at taking your resources and trying to think about where the market has to have you and where the market, if you invest correctly, you can start to jumpstart other parts of the private market to take over, right? The goal isn't public investment for the end of time. It's to think about how we're investing so that other things can get jump-started. So to Alderman Durkee's question about the mix of where we should be spending dollars, there are a lot of properties that need to be rehabbed, and like the mayor said, we've been really focused on that. We've been really trying to not let the floor fall out any further and to really think about our residents in that way. Turning to also evening out how we're spending our money on new construction opportunities is how we take this median property value growth that we've seen, stabilize it, and accelerate it. New construction brings back value into our properties faster than preservation does. So preservation is great for our history. It's great to reestablish our neighborhoods. We absolutely want to keep focusing on that. And we have some housing strategy framework language that we're working on, and we'll be talking to all of you about to do that, to continue to think about that. But new construction and purposely spending on some new construction starts is really essential to continuing to think about how we get the private market going in a more accelerated pace.
Alderman Durkee.
A couple of things. Number one, that study was more regional than it couldn't be broken down to specifically Rockford. They also made some employee assumptions. I disagree with new construction necessarily causing growth, and it depends on what you call by growth. I would say that the long-term residents of Rockford would advocate that some of the development that occurred in Rockford was actually detrimental, given almost an unregulated sprawl. It's sometimes why we have now created in some people's minds an East and West Rockford. So we develop and push out on the east side of Rockford, and there are new housing, big homes being built in the first ward, but that's where the push will go. And developers, unfortunately, it's a harsh reality, they want to make money. So they will develop, they will push out somewhere else, and people will buy newer, bright, shiny, and new homes, and they will continue to avoid neighborhoods of challenge. And so while what you say is true, it's true only to a degree. And this is why you'll ask, people who grew up in Rockford, and they look at Broadway and 7th, and they remember what it used to be. And the question is, why did it become the way it did? And I would advocate that it was unregulated sprawl, and that conditions were set that people could abandon certain areas of Rockford, and that needs really to stop. And that's why I'm really advocating more that some of this federal funding goes toward revamping and pulling back some of our distressed neighborhoods before we start throwing up new buildings somewhere else. We've already tried that, and it doesn't work. It happened in Chicago with suburban flight. It happens in a lot of places. So part of that comment is true, part of it is false.
Any other questions or comments? Your Honor?
I am just excited that our first ward alderman will be supporting our home funds that go to pay for those roofs and the windows that occasionally our first ward alderman will complain that we are paying for. So I am thrilled that moving forward we'll have that support.
I voted for him. Indeed.
Any other questions or comments? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Aye.
Aye.
Hoffman. Aye.
3 ayes.
Did we do the fourth one? Yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. This meeting is adjourned.
Meeting for February 10th. Clerk, please call the roll. Here. Good. We have quorum. I kind of feel like this was the same thing 2 weeks ago, is it not? Continue to remember Alderman Logeman while he's gone and serving our country, and Alderman Frost, which get well. I won't get in anymore because to violate HIPAA. So, I'm that attorney. Do you recommend that? First, we have committee reports. Number 1, approval of vouchers in the amount of $11,010,994.32. Motion second. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Matter passes. Number 3, we go to resolutions. Award of bid, citywide pavement rejuvenation 2025 to Corrective Asphalt Materials, LLC of South Roxana, Illinois, in the amount of $215,757.52. The contract duration is through August 1st, 2025. The funding source is motor fuel tax. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Discussion, questions? I will make just a comment. This is for basically, this is going to affect pretty much nearly every ward, if not all wards. and this is for the, basically the longevity of our roads.
Yes, this is basically spraying every single neighborhood road that we resurfaced last year.
Thank you, Director Higgins. So if your constituents do see this, it is a prudent thing to do. All those in favor, say aye. 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 Matter passes. Item B, award of bid, snow removal, municipal parking lots and multi-use paths to Keone Management Services of Cicero, Illinois, in the estimated annual amount of $140,000 based on unit pricing. Contract duration is through September 30th, 2025, with 4 possible one-year extension options. Annual price adjustments and CPI considered at contract renewal only. Funding sources are the Parking Fund operating budget and Water Fund operating budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Second. Discussion. Comments. I do have one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mitch. When I looked at there was also another entity involved in this bid. When I looked at it, was I seeing wrong? It looked like that bid, the competing bid, was lower.
So we have 3 categories for pricing in here. First category is plowing labor only. Second category is salting labor only, where we would provide the salt. The third price, and it's a little misleading how it's listed on here, actually the salt's included by the vendor. So there's going to be a little bit of increase in price, but that's not necessarily our standard in the way we operate. We just put it in there to have it as an option, just in case.
All right, good. Thanks for clarifying, Mr. Leatherby. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter passes. Item C, award a bid, traffic signals and lighting, electrical parts, light fixtures, poles, and supplies to Steiner Electric Company of Itasca, Illinois, and Traffic Control Corporation of Woodridge, Illinois, in the estimated annual amount of $150,000 based on unit pricing. Contract duration is through December 31st, 2025, with 4 possible one-year extension options. Annual price adjustments for CPI considered at contract renewal only. Funding source is the Traffic Division operating budget. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Matter passes. Item D, award of non-competitive contract, forestry heavy equipment log loader repairs to Rick's Equipment of Iron River, Michigan, in the amount of $64,750. This is a one-time purchase. The funding source is capital lease funds. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Alderwoman Prunty.
Oh, go ahead.
Alderman Beach.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
When will we take delivery on this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you ask that again?
When will we take delivery on this unit?
So this is a refurbish of an existing unit that we own currently.
Okay.
So as soon as it would pass through council, we would schedule out with the upfitting entity and send the truck up to them.
Yeah, I noticed they were asking for payment in 60 days. That's why I was asking that question. Thank you.
Sure.
Alderwoman Prunty.
This is a non-competitive contract, again, because they're the best game, only game in town?
They were, yes.
Okay.
And they were the original company that built this unit back when it was purchased in 2012, I believe it was.
And this is probably not a question for you, but if somebody could just tell me, can someone send me our policy on non-competitive contracts? Do we have something written?
Yes, we do.
We do?
I'm sure we do.
Can I see it?
We
City
can send
legal?
you.
Okay, thank you.
More? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Leatherby. I did notice that it looks like from what I could tell, that the truck itself is fine, with the exception of that loading equipment is what looks like it needs to be replaced.
Right. We wouldn't have made the recommendation to go this route had we suspected problems with the actual truck itself, but it's relatively low mileage. However, it is used on a daily basis, and the bulk of the wear and tear on this unit isn't necessarily with the actual truck engine chassis itself, it's with everything else that's built on it. And it's not that there's anything necessarily wrong, but we feel that by bringing it back to them, going through replacing the critical units that are used on a daily basis, we can get at least 10 more years of life out of it.
Well, that tornado through the 3rd Ward put that through a lot of use.
That truck is out almost every day, regardless
What's
of the purpose.
What's the price of a new truck?
Best we can tell, north of $300,000.
All right, so we're doing this for $64,750. So good job on that. Thank you, Mr. Leatherby, and everyone else involved.
Sure.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter passes. Item E, approval and acceptance of fiscal year 26 Violent Crime Victims Assistance Program Grant Award from the Office of the Illinois Attorney General in the amount of $180,724.16. The grant does not require a cost match. The grant term is from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. The grant award, if accepted, will provide funding that will support the hiring of key staff to enhance crisis response and long-term case management for survivors at the Family Peace Center. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. Questions?
Sir.
Yes, Alderman Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What will fund this after 2025? Or 6, excuse me.
Continuation funding from the grant. Alderman, these actually, I want to clarify, we already have the 2 staff. This is supplemental funding. They are currently grant funded through DCEO. This grant will allow an additional year of funding, and we'll continue to pursue grant funding, non-federal, for these 2 positions.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next, motion to adjourn. Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.